Sean Capri, and welcome to We the GamerCast. It publishes on podcast services and youtube.com/YouMeCapri every single Monday. Patrons get it first. Thank you guys for subscribing, for hitting the like button, for telling your mom, for telling your friends, for telling your dad, for telling your dad's friend that you didn't know that he had. Why does your dad? Is it weird when your parents have friends and you're like, what are you spending time with them for? I would like to see you. Why don't you call me sometime, Mom? It's kind of reverse, I think, than what it normally goes. How are you guys? I'm so glad that you're here. This is a good one. I already record. I know. You don't know. Isn't that a weird thing? I don't think I've ever pointed this out, you guys. I know exactly what happens in this episode, and you don't. That's why you're here. Unless you skipped ahead. Unless you did. Maybe some of you do a Pulp Fiction kind of version of this show, and you listen to the conversation, and then you go to the intro, and then you go to the... Oh my gosh. Tell me if you do that, but I'm getting pretty far ahead of myself, because if you're new, here's the deal. Every week I have sweet hangs with a stranger from the internet. We talk about life in video games, and if you want to be on the show, just tweet at me at Sean Capri. Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. Now, you guys, I have just a couple things I need to tell you about. This isn't really new, but it's impacting my life to a significant degree right now. I don't know what to play next. I just finished God of War 2018. It was on the PC that I played it. Thank you to our friends at PlayStation Canada for providing the code. The reason I bring it up now is because I finished it last week. I rolled credits on it. I believe this is the second game that I have rolled credits on in 2022, which is not too bad because we're, 5 weeks into this sucker? Son of a gun. So I've got actually a spreadsheet that Jace over at twitch.tv/BackaRidge, he provided me with this spreadsheet, and I like a good spreadsheet. This is a good spreadsheet, and I'm a little behind in keeping track of it, but what it does is it's just like day to day, what have I played day to day? All the games, and it's a lot. I will say, like, I definitely go a couple of days without updating this thing. But what I want to have is by the end of 2022, going by like month by month, day by day, rainbow column by rainbow row, what did I play in 2022? And for the most part, like, it's not really a big deal, except for the fact that here I find myself playing PlayStation games, PC games, Nintendo Switch games, Xbox games, and Patriot games. I don't know. I was like, there's got to be something there. And shout out to anybody who knows what Patriot games are. I think was that Harrison Ford? Jack Ryan? Is that what that was? I feel like I remember it in my grandpa's VHS tape collection. But in any case, the games are all over the place, and it's hard to keep track of all the things, especially like PC, I guess. Steam keeps track, but I mean, there's Steam, there's Epic, there's the Ubisoft stuff, there's the whatever. Xbox, all those things. Right, so, and Nintendo, Nintendo's like keeping track of my stuff. Come on, man. So I don't know. Like by the end of the year, I'm like, I sometimes have a hard time going, what did I even play in January? So I like that this is a thing. So I'm keeping track of that. But the reason I bring up God of War, in addition to all of this, is because you guys can go over to the PlayStation Drive and listen to my full-on review, spoiler-free plus spoiler-filled review with Matt from the PlayStation Drive. We recorded that last week, and I had an amazing time, man. Spoilers on my review. I think it's one of the best games I've ever played in my entire life. And if you want to know what I'm thinking about that, please go listen to it on the PlayStation Drive, or all the content that we make here at You Capri, you can get very easily at patreon.com/YouMeCapri. I'm going to take that segue that I did not plan, but it sort of spilled out of my mouth right now. If you guys want to support everything that we do here at You Capri, go to patreon.com/YouMeCapri, just like some 70 plus members over at patreon.com/YouMeCapri, like our premium producers, Dallas Ford, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team. I just joined. You should join extra-life.org and join the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team. Raise money for those kids. Johnathan Brown, the man behind the music on the Xbox Drive and the Nintendo Drive. You can download his latest album, In My Element, on Spotify and Apple Music if you haven't left Spotify, I guess, recently. Platinum producers Robbie Bobby Miller and Trucker Sloth, recent member and recent guest on this show. Gold members Argo, Brendan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Dano, Emily O'Kelly, Foolish Fuji, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Marcus O'Neill, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, RJ Kern, Skitty Matt, Tony Baker, and Xavier Reyes. You guys are absolutely crushing it these days. You are, man, my dreams, like all the dreams are coming true, especially thanks to all of our newest members at patreon.com/YumiCapri, Cypher Primus, Court Lalonde, Rebecca, Dad's After Dark Show, and Nick Metzger. You guys are changing the world, man. Holy crap. There's so much stuff happening and more to come. Little teaser for you guys. What else did I want to tell you guys about? I feel like there was at least one other. The BackTrackers. There's one more thing that I wanted, and then I'll get you off to the conversation with Captain Logun, and it's a good one. Some of you guys like playing games, and you like talking to people about those games. And once upon a time, I had a guest named Delroy, I had a guest named Marcus O'Neill. I become friends with both these guys, and they decided to lead the community with the BackTrackers. It's a video game book club, and the next game that everybody's playing, you should be there, is Spiritfarer. It is so great. It's by Thunder Lotus Games. The developer describes it as a cozy management game about dying. I don't think I read that sentence before I actually said it out loud. I was kind of like, that was wrong energy for it. In it, you play as Stella, ferry master to the deceased, a Spiritfarer. Build a boat to explore the world, then befriend and care for the spirits before finally releasing them into the afterlife. I'm telling you guys a little off script here. This game is gorgeous. It is on Game Pass. It's also available on Switch, PlayStation, PC. You really owe it to yourself to play this, to experience it. And I got to jump in just for a quick moment to the BackTrackers. They had a I guess you guys are calling them meetings. They had a meeting. They had a get together, a little rendezvous over the weekend to discuss Boyfriend Dungeon. And good group, man, and growing group. This time was bigger than last time. The last time was a lot bigger than the last time. So you guys are going to want to be part of this. It is so cool that the community is driving this forward. I am a huge fan of Spiritfarer, and you know what? This might just take care of my whole I don't know what to play next. The next meeting is scheduled for Saturday, March 5th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, right here in the Discord. It's free to join. You do not have to be a patron to do any of this stuff. You can just be a listener, whatever you like. And tell your friends. The bigger, the better, the more, the merrier. All that stuff. Thank you guys. And thank you, Marcus and Delroy, for just crushing it. Now, you guys, Captain Logun, he is an incredible podcaster and even better, just an incredible person, man. There's a moment in this chat, and I hope you guys catch it. Just a little like something to pay attention to. I wasn't sure whether or not to push on it or not. Every night, like maybe I'll jump back to the end, but there's a point in here where you could kind of see I could go one way or I could go another way, but we go the one way. And I'm glad we did. I'm glad Captain Logun was here. I think you guys are going to enjoy this. So enjoy my conversation with Captain Logun. Look at us with our microphones, and
I know
you got stickers all over yours. Actually, like I'm super jealous of that.
These are fun. This one was Roaming Megalodon, which was part of a Sea of Thieves thing that we did, and they made stickers for it. So it was like a bunch of community members coming together and stuff. So you should do stickers next time you do like the charity events and stuff. That way people can throw them on stuff.
That's a good idea. Maybe I'll just I'll sell patches of my skin that people can put.
That works.
Some sort of patches on. Yeah, I wouldn't think I would commit to a tattoo. I think stickers are, right?
Yeah, they're kind of like temporary tattoos in a good way.
Yeah, do like a full sleeve of stickers. Because I'm hardcore like that.
You do face painting if you really wanted to.
That would actually, yeah, let's all just go get the Mike Tyson. Like whatever that is. What is it on? What is on his face? Like a claw or something? I'm not sure.
I don't know. It's just a weird tattoo that he thought was fun at the time, I guess.
You like imagine waking up every morning, looking in the mirror and seeing like that's still there. Like that's forever, man. On your face. Do you have any tattoos anywhere?
I do. I have a Sea of Thieves one.
Oh, there you go. Oh, snap. Okay.
That's that one.
That's awesome.
And then I've got the Harry Potter Dark Mark on this one.
Oh, wow.
So, and then I've got Mario 3 with the raccoon tail and the hat on the back here, and then a dragon on this side. So
that Mario 3, I love that. Mario 3 was actually the theme of my wife. Our when we got married, all of our invite stuff was Mario 3 themed. We actually made like it was I took a picture of Peach where it looked like she was kind of like flying, and I made them kind of hold hands, like you know how he has his arms out. Yeah. So I had Peach kind of with her arms out, and I paired them together, so it looked like they were flying together. That's and the invites came in like it looked like an NES cartridge.
So you
Oh,
opened it
wow.
up, and that's where all our like details were about our crews and everything.
Aw,
So
that's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I love like that artwork, like really. And you're wearing like, Mario shirt. Actually, I'm wearing
Yeah.
Mario. Look at it. Look at us. We're like Xbox podcasters. We're all Mario'd out. I mean, at least you got the
Stay true to the
Xbox
roots,
tattoo
man.
stuff. I mean, really, yeah. Are you like are you an 80s kid?
Yeah,
Grew up in the 80s? Yeah.
Yeah, 82 was my birthday, so when I was born, so it's all in the blood.
Where did it start for you, man?
When I was 7, I was visiting. My parents had taken me to Texas to visit some family. I had a bunch of aunts and uncles and stuff. And for my 7th birthday, they got me an NES. And I had no clue what it was. I had absolutely no clue. The only thing I ever knew about video games was arcades were a thing. And I got to visit. There was like a Pac-Man, or like anytime I went to the dentist, my dentist as a child, they had a Galaga machine in their like an arcade cabinet. So, but it was only for the kids that were just waiting around. It was never for the kids that actually like were going for a reason. So I was always like looking across the hall, and I was like, oh, I just want to go over there and play that, but I can't because I'm here to, and I'm like, well, what kids are going to be at a dentist office not getting stuff done?
Seriously.
So, I don't know.
It's really for the staff's kids, actually. It's kind of like a makeshift kind of daycare kind of area for everybody over there. There was like this weird allure, when you were a kid, and there you could see an arcade or some games like off in the distance, but you couldn't play. Like, I don't know about you, but I was just like, I would always stare at it. Like, I remember we were watching, like, I was at the neighbor's house watching World Cup back in the day, like the Italian family down the block, and they had an NES down there, and I never had it. I actually had to, all my NES days were at somebody else's house. And so when I saw one, I'm like, so like, when are we going to like stop doing what we're doing so we could actually like go over there and play? But you specified 82. I feel like 82 might be like one of the best years to be born and then live your life in video games. Like earlier than that might be too soon. You might be playing NES or something like that when you're maybe a little too old. Like, you got to experience it all. Like, 7 is a great age to jump into video games, I feel. Yeah. Because you can remember it.
Yeah, there was a good time where, and it's funny because I don't remember what the actual birthdays were, but I remember I had an NES, and I remember my birthday because of the NES. Yeah, just like I remember, like, I think it was my 13th birthday. It was like 12 or 13 when I got my SNES. Yeah, that was the birthday that I remembered, and it's like the ones that I remember have always been game system birthdays. I've never remembered any of the other ones before I was like 18 or something. Those are all just blurs.
Are you like, what's your situation? Are you married? Do you have kids? Like, are you single? Like, what's your deal?
I am married. My wife and I, we got married about 10 years ago. We don't have any kids. We kind of, when we first met up, it was always like, all right, here's our religious perspectives. Here's our political perspectives. Here's our child perspectives,
Yeah. Just lay out all the real stuff.
Yeah. When we started dating, it was like, all right, here's what I need from a relationship. Here's what I expect in my future. Do these line up before we even mess around with this?
Yeah, no kidding.
So that was kind of the way that got started. But yeah, no kids, just cats. We've always been big on cats just because they're fluffy and they make noise from time to time, and we can cuddle them. And sometimes they run away, sometimes they don't. So it's always, like it's always just a mishmash of never sure what's going on. But we don't have the 50 grand worth of debt looming over our head for college of thing, which is nice. So
yeah, okay. So that was part of the discussion, was like, look, I want to grow up and not have kids. That was kind of was part of that outcome. Yeah.
Which is weird for a gamer, because it's like, it feels like every gamer that I talk to is always like, I want to have a player too when I grow up, or when I don't know,
that's weird. Dude, I remember specifically saying, like, one day I think I might be a real bad dad. Like, I don't know how to do that, man. Like, I don't know. I don't think that I don't remember really growing up around a lot of other dudes who are like, yeah, I can't wait to be a dad. Like, that's just not a thing that really happened. And I think it's totally, I wish more people kind of talked about that, like that. Yeah. You're going to just get married and you're just going to like not have kids. And for that to just be just the same as everybody who does anything else, You know, like I don't think that it's right to put anybody in a position to like, you should do this. Like, why are you doing that? Like that, dude, like, I don't know. It's just not, arguably most people probably shouldn't have kids. Like it's probably one other way to look at it.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I still get questions from like coworkers and stuff. Like they'll still be like, oh, you'll have kids. And I'm like, you realize I'm like 39 years old. Like it's the time to have kids would have been like 10, 15 years ago. Like that was when I should have started having kids. But
you're jinxing yourself now, man. That's not going to happen.
Well, not the nice thing, but the interesting thing is that my wife's side of the family are all sisters. And they were born with 2 chromosomes that were crossed. So when we talk about like having kids, every woman has like a probability of having a miscarriage. It's not like a never have it kind of thing. It's like there's always an opportunity for it. And the chromosomes that determine that are flipped in her case. So her whole family has had nothing but miscarriages except for a couple of them who've had successful births. So, and even with some of the kids that they've had, they've always had like issues with birth, you know? So when we went into our relationship, my wife was in her second relationship. I was in my first, and we kind of laid it down. And it was like, okay, well, the probability of us having a successful pregnancy without miscarriage is pretty low already. It's not something that we really am like striving to have. So why not just be each other's best friends for the rest of life? And just kind of what it's been ever since.
That's amazing. How did you guys meet?
We met because of theater in Alaska. We both did community theater. Funny enough, when she was doing community theater, she was doing it as an escape from her marriage at the time because she was in a very abusive relationship with an alcoholic. And so she was like trying to get away from that. I was going there because I was single and wanted to have fun in theater. So I got invited to a karaoke after party from one of my buddies. And he's like, hey, I just got done. We did, what show was it? I want to say it was Pride and Prejudice. They did. So mostly women, couple dudes in the cast. He's like, hey, I know you weren't in the show, but if you want to come hang out, the whole cast is at the karaoke bar down in Wasilla, Alaska. And I was like, yeah, sure. I got nothing going on. I'm playing World of Warcraft. I can.
Oh, I gotta come back to that. Okay.
Yeah. So that was kind of the impetus is when I went to the karaoke bar, I sat down, hung out with my buddy, and then I wanted to go dance, which is a rare occasion for me. And I asked,
that's what I was going to ask about this whole thing. Is this a typical thing for you, like go out and just kind of like somebody invites you out, or do you typically like go, maybe not tonight?
I'm a big in-house person now, but when I was single, I used to go out a lot. In fact, I was probably a lot more outgoing, to put it mildly.
Same.
I won't go too deep into it, but I was a very flirty guy when I was in my 20s. And so because of that, like I just, any excuse to go out and get out of my house was always fun. But I also really loved video games. And at the time where I was at in my life, it was in Alaska. I had moved up there with my mom. This was after a couple of years after my dad had passed away. So she's living with her old high school buddy, who's now her boyfriend. And we're just living up in this cold area. So like, and I had nothing to my name except for the GameCube, the Game Boy Advance, and my computer. And it was either, live in depression or get out and go do something. And theater was that escape. And I just happened to meet my wife as a result of that.
That is absolutely wild. There's so much to unpack there. There's probably probably about 6 or 7 threads there. Talk to me about moving to Alaska. Where were you moving from? And then like, what was that like? Because I think for some people, I feel like when I think of Alaska, one of the first things that I think of, oddly enough, is like Wheel of Fortune and like winning some sort of like cruise out of Alaska. They always made it look so glorious and glamorous and like white and picturesque and beautiful. And it's like, I live in northern Canada, and like that's farther north than here. And like the reality kind of sets in to go like, is it all of that? Like, is it dark and cold all the time? Tell me about Alaska, man.
So I moved up to Alaska from Arizona because I thought,
oh my God.
why not move from one extreme to the other? If anyone doesn't know, living in Arizona, I grew up in Arizona, and that was probably a good, it was 2005. So what are we looking at? Like 23 years of my life.
Oh my gosh.
Spent in Arizona, used to the heat, totally fine with it. In fact, I still really love the heat. But growing up in one place, everyone. And Phoenix was still a pretty small area and stuff. So, I had all my high school people there. I had all my college people there. I had, been very promiscuous around down there. And it was just like everywhere I go, I started bumping into people that I'd known. And after a while, I was like, I need a change. And so my mom, because of my dad's death, was leaving, and she left. She decided she was going to come back. And she needed to pick up some stuff. And she's like, there's an open invitation. If you want to come to Alaska, it'll be a change. If you want to get out and you just want to see some stuff, you can come hang with me and my boyfriend for a while and see how things go. And I was like, why not? Let's say yes to something. So we drove up there, the whole Alcan, and took the trip. It took about a week for us to just do sightseeing and stuff all the way from Arizona all the way up to Alaska. Yeah. And I'll be honest, the living in Alaska is different. Yeah. You remember when the 2008 crash happened and everyone lost their house and everyone was losing jobs, and it was a really hard time for the United States just in general. That didn't impact Alaska. Nothing changed for us. Everything was still the same. We heard about everything that was going on, and it was just another day for us. That's how segregated that state is from the rest of the world. So because of that, the balance between men and women, because there's a lot of Air Force Base up there, plus there's also just a lot of guys that love living out in the woods and stuff like that. You're basically hanging around a bunch of dudes. And as much as I loved the scenery of Alaska, the people there are really weird and really, really strange, very set in their ways. Yes. So when you see like Wheel of Fortune and they're like, we're gonna take you on a cruise up to Alaska and stuff, you get to see the best bits. Like a cruise to Alaska is the best bits. You get to see the icebergs and the glacial movements and stuff. You get to see all the little towns and you get to visit them, and all those towns are completely set up just for those things. Totally. But when you're like dead set in Alaska and you're shoveling, feet of snow or meters and meters of snow, and you're just there's one freeway in and out of the major town, Anchorage, and if it ices over and people start getting in accidents, or you wake up in the morning to go turn on the block heater for your car so that your car will start. Yes. If you walk outside and you see a moose licking your car, then you call into work. Like, that's just what you do. It's such a different world up there. And everything feels like it's like probably a good 5 years behind everyone else in society. It's really weird.
Is it because it's got to be difficult even just to get things up there to you? I know that that's the case in like Northwest Territories and Yukon and everything, like even just shipping and like buying things. I often wonder that in terms of like technology wise and gaming wise, how do you like, is that a thing that you keep up with, or did you just bring the computer you had with you and just kind of dealt with that over the time that you were there?
Yeah. So in the area that I was living in, my mom's boyfriend was like one of 5 techs that were in the area that were up there. And he went and serviced everyone because he was like one of the main tech guys. He'd been up there forever and stuff. So getting technology was thankfully pretty easy because I was literally living with a guy who had rooms and rooms of spare parts. So if I needed to piece together a computer, like it was pretty easy. But like the internet up there is terrible. It's all bandwidth capped. It's like, it's miserable. So, it'd be great if you're a retro fan, you got a bunch of consoles and stuff like that. But it's
if you're a retro fan, go like time travel and move up to Alaska there. Oh my gosh, man. How many years were you there for?
7. I did
That's
7
not
years.
that's not a short stay, dude. That's a
No.
significant amount of time, man.
Yeah, and it was thankfully because of my wife, because she was working for a law firm, I was working for an Office Max, and she hit me up one day, and I think it was just one of those moments because she grew up in Idaho, so neither of us are like, we're both ducks out of the water at this point.
That's crazy.
She called me up one day, and I'm sitting in the storage room just messing around with hard drives, like stocking them and stuff like that. She hits me up and she's like, I think I want to move. And I'm like, okay, where do you want to move to? She's like, down south. And I'm like, down south, like Juneau, or down south, like lower 48? She's like, lower 48. And I was like, okay, like back to Idaho, or what are you thinking? She's like, well, where do you want to go? And I'm like, well, I'd love to be an actor. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I've always wanted to move to California. What do you think about California? And she's like, all right, California, it's warm, we'll go there. And that was it.
That was
the decision.
That was it. Was that like a 30-second conversation?
Yeah. I walked out of that room, walked over to my boss, and I told him, I was like, hey, Chance, I love you, but I'm going to be quitting in a month. I'm moving down to the lower 48. And he's like, no, you can't do that. And I was like, it's going to happen, dude. I'm sorry. He's like,
he says no.
Yeah, he's just like, no, you can't leave me. And I was like, I would just really appreciate it if you could help me find a store down in SoCal to move to. To transfer to and stuff. And that was the plan. She quit her job. We sold everything, our cars, pretty much everything except for 2 suitcases, 4 boxes, our cat, and a couple backpacks. Everything.
So were you married at this time when you had this conversation about moving? Where you're still dating at the time?
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a pretty significant life decision. And obviously you didn't have to like run this by like your mom or anything, or like did you made that decision in that?
Probably should have. Yeah. Probably should have let her know. She was not happy about that, but yeah.
But what were you, like 20, your mid 20s at this point, 26 or something like that?
Let's see. This would have been 2011. So almost 30. I would have been 29.
Yeah, I mean, you're an adult, like you're well into it. It's not exactly not like you're not a permission type of thing, but maybe a heads up, like, hey, I'm thinking about this. Did it shock her? Like, how did she react when you finally told her?
She didn't think I was going to make it. She didn't think I had a snowball's chance in hell that I was going to make it down there. She's like, you've never moved down to California. You don't know what it's like. You don't have any money. You don't all these reasons and stuff. And then, 20 grand later and a couple backpacks. Mom. Exactly.
20 grand.
Well, that's what we saved. We managed to, because we still had some savings. Plus, we sold our cars and stuff. So we scraped together 20 grand in a month, and we just liquidated everything and moved down to SoCal and started fresh with nothing except for someone. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask you about your wife when you guys first met, when you were first kind of like dating and stuff. Like, what was it that you obviously had at a certain point very early on talked about the politics, the kid plan, the family plan, and all that. What was it that you sort of like that kind of drew you together? That you realized like maybe you got something in common, maybe there's a spark there.
I think it was just an acceptance of being ourselves.
That's awesome.
We really didn't have a whole lot in common outside of we just enjoyed movies. We enjoyed each other's company, and it was just a good. She is the yin to my yang. So where I'm good with dealing with like finances or getting stuff done, things like that, she's good at handling like making sure things are taken care of around the house and making sure that she's staying on top of me to make sure that I get things done and things. So she complements all the things that I struggle with in life. Yeah. And because of that, I take care of all the things that she doesn't want to deal with.
Had you been thinking about leaving Alaska before that? Is that why you're so ready for that conversation to be coming up? Or like, was it basically when she brought it up, did you think, maybe that I hadn't thought about it this way, but I guess, let's move. Like Hollywood sounds good.
I would say that at the time I didn't realize it. In retrospect, I probably was ready for it. I'd definitely been kind of like bored with Alaska. The only thing going on up there was either theater or the state fair. And, when Boys to Men is the biggest headliner you can get for the state fair.
Boys to Men
in Alaska. It's and as someone that doesn't really, I don't really go out camping. I don't really go hunting or things like that. It's, there wasn't really a whole lot for me. I was much happier down in lower 48. So it was like, I was kind of ready to get back to civilization, come out of the woods.
Was there ever a moment along the journey where you're like, what am I doing? Like, is this a big decision to be making with somebody I'm not married to? Like, it also seems like you guys were like those having those serious conversations that early. I feel like it kind of afterwards, it almost doesn't matter if you're married or not. Like you're a couple of steps ahead of where maybe other people might be at the same time. You just get that out of the way.
I had full trust in her. She'd moved a bunch of times. She was used to it. I'm used to doing what needs to get done if it needs to get done, and just making it work. Both of us are very financially like stable. We don't really like, I spend the most money on most toys. She never buys anything for herself. It's not like she has like, closets worth of clothes or she does have closets worth of clothes, but it's all practical. She's very, very
of course.
Practical.
Yeah.
So
many of us have a closet full of clothes. I would hope. At the very least, we have a closet at least semi full of clothing. Yeah, that would be good. So does that make it weird then because you got like quite the collection behind you? I do. But it's just like maybe like what is back there? A bunch of Funkos. Like Funkos is probably the biggest thing I'm seeing.
I believe it or not, I would say 75%. So this one,
there's
and
Amiibo,
this one are all Amiibo. This one right here, that's actually all pop figures, and then I've got like my gargoyle collection on top of one of these guys here. But even like the ones that are above the little stands here and on top of here, those are all Amiibo as well too. And then I've got all kinds of weird stuff. I don't even know if you can see the glass case, but the glass case here is actually the showcase of like my favorite franchises. So I got Sea of Thieves, I've got Zelda Breath of the Wild, Warcraft, and then Harry Potter down in the bottom.
Freaking Warcraft, man. I feel like Warcraft might be the main event here, but I want to, I feel like one of the biggest things is Sea of Thieves that I also want to get to. World of Warcraft, you mentioned. Do you want to talk about your dad at all?
There's not much to say. He was a quiet man. He didn't show emotions, and when he did, it was usually anger. He worked hard, and he was dealt a bad hand because of the people that he was raised with, and being a kind of a weird middle child. So it was one of those things where his death at the time didn't impact me because as much as he was a part of my life, it didn't feel like I ever had a strong connection. In fact, I don't feel like I have like a strong connection to any of my family members. Really, my wife is kind of my family member.
I mean, that does kind of allow you, I would imagine, to go from Alaska to wherever it was you guys were going to move to. Just like to not really have like that connective tissue or that strong connection to like, or maybe like you feel like you've got roots somewhere, like you just can kind of like go make it work to wherever you're going to go. Where's your mom? Were they together when he passed away, or had they split? Like, I get the sense that maybe they were not together.
They were together for the sake of being together because I was a thing. If I wasn't a thing, then there was a strong chance that at some point she probably would have left him. But my mom decided that having a broken home was better than a broken relationship for me. And it's a shame because it never felt like my father ever got to have that loving family that he wanted. He never got the dad, or he never got the son that wanted to play catch out in the backyard. He did get like, some moments where we would go out fishing or we would go out and do golfing and stuff, but those were few and far between. And then eventually he got sick. And when that happened, it was like, well, this is the way life is going to go. And we were already at a point where no one was really happy with it. So it was just a really rough go. It was back a time when they didn't know about like hepatitis C or hepatitis at all. Yeah. And he got a back surgery, and the blood infusion that they did.
You've got to be kidding me.
For the surgery was blood from a person that had hepatitis. So he ended up dying from complications as a result of the hepatitis. And it was just a really slow, painful situation.
Oh, that is gut wrenching, man. Holy cow. I'm so sorry to hear that. It's definitely something that you think like now, just with the benefit of time is something that you kind of screen for, you certainly want to prevent, and we know about it now, but it's like,
Yeah.
goodness gracious. Yeah.
It was kind of up there with the, it was the silent killer to AIDS. If everyone knew about and was talking about AIDS, hepatitis was the thing that was killing people that no one talked about. And it was one of those weird things. It was like, it wasn't because of anything that he contracted from anyone else. It was literally just hospitals didn't screen for that stuff.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be a back surgery.
What did you mean? So before that, did you guys just not have you didn't have like the strongest relationship because he wasn't around, or what was that? Because you kind of mentioned like he might have been wanting to have a close relationship with you, but you weren't really wanting to do the things with him.
It's an interesting story because it's unfortunate because he's not around to tell his side of it. I can ever only glean from my perspective what I thought his desires were, because after my dad passed away, I realized how much resentment there was between him and my mother. And so now I have a jaded perspective from my mother's side of it. And I have him gone and just what I have left over from my memories. So very much of his history is left as an enigma to me as a result. But from what I've been told, it was one of those things where when I was born, he was bummed that I didn't pop out with a baseball glove in a ball and want to go play catch right away. There was this whole raising a child aspect to it. And it's hard to know like how much of that is true, how much of it is just, like impressions or expectations, things like that. So, but
a bit exaggeration maybe too.
Yeah. But I mean, I grew up a latchkey kid. So, in the 90s, it was a safe enough time when, you could leave your house locked up with just a deadbolt. You gave the kid a key and he would go to school and come back from school and do whatever he needed to do. And both, at the time, my parents both worked. So most of the time I never really saw my parents. And when I did see them, my dad would always go up to the living room after dinner was made. He would start watching sports. My mom would go into he would go into the bedroom. She would go into the living room and she would watch Star Trek and shows like that. And I would either hang out with her or I'd go up to my room and play games. And as an only child, like that was my entertainment. Games were my entertainment back then.
Yeah, I remember having, I didn't have necessarily even the only child. Couldn't be further from an only child experience. We had 4 kids in the house. So that was not a thing, but everybody, all my friends who were it was just them, it was games all the time. And they were the best friends to have actually. Cause they were so excited to have you over and to have somebody around. They always had the best games and everything too. It's like the gold mine over there.
Oh,
man.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It was great. One thing that you seem to have you done a lot of reflection on this, like your comments just about how he's not around to tell his side of the story, and that even just you having an open mind to perhaps there is another side of the story. Where does that come from? That seems like you've thought about this for a bit.
I've had to. It's something when you have people in your life that point to the ones that you grew up with and say those people are exhibiting examples of manipulation. You start to have that lust, that kind of luster. I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but you get disillusioned to the aspect that your parents are something special and that they're not just human beings who have screwed up a lot in their life. So when I start seeing, the things that that my mom has done both when I was younger and also as an adult, through my own experiences, and just realizing after I've dated a lot of people and stuff and gotten to understand, the issues that I have and the issues that I see in others. When I hear my mother talk about my father, I have to take it with a grain of salt because I realize that they had a very broken relationship towards the end there. And anything that she's saying could very well be tinged with notes of perspective. And if I don't look at it from that perspective, then I start to realize that I start to resent my father. And that could have been, I very easily could be resenting my father for false reasons without hearing his side.
That is that's usually I think the term is wise beyond your years, but I mean, you've lived a life at this point. You've definitely had a ton of experiences around it, but that's a very, I don't know, it's a very evolved take on the whole situation. I think it's a very mature take on everything. And I think the other thing too, kind of think whether or not people can relate to the parental situation, but I think that the notion of one person's commentary on another person can really only impact your perception of that person to it should be limited how much that can impact. And I feel like I've definitely been, like in the past, I feel like I've been swayed by one person's storytelling of another person to go like, I get too persuaded in that. And sometimes I catch myself going like, this person didn't do anything to me, or maybe this other like, I just feel like your perception is bang on, dude. And it's probably better to give the benefit of the doubt at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something that's helped serve me. It's probably why I'm always so on the fence when it comes to talking about games in the industry. Is probably why I enjoy talking about games from multiple perspectives, and why I'm okay doing a solo show. Because first off, I'm an only child, so I'm used to talking to myself. I'm used to having conversations with myself.
Yeah.
But being able to step outside of a situation and think about different perspectives, and same thing with theater too. You have to empathize with villains if you want to be a villain. You have to see things from their perspective. One of my favorite roles was playing Dracula, and trying to put yourself into a fictional character like that and understand where they're coming from. It really only helps to serve you in the long run if you try to look at situations for people who are doing things that look negative, but don't always, that they're either coming from the best intentions, or they are coming from a perspective that is not understanding why they're doing the things they're doing. And if you don't see that perspective, it's really easy to start labeling things the way that you really ought not to.
Yeah, man, that's wild. I love that you do the solo. I love the parallels here. Everything just kind of makes sense. Growing up the way that you did, and then starting into a solo podcast. Where did that start? Where did your content creation journey start? Was it podcasting, or like? Because for me, it was writing. Actually, podcasting didn't come until years later. Actually. Which is to me is way easier. You throw up a mic and you go like, and because I think there's also like a certain forgiveness from the audience of, there's not going to be 100% polish. And I held myself in the writing situation. I held myself to a certain standard that like, I've got an opportunity to at least read this over before I hit publish. So I ought to do that. And I just did it over and over. And I don't even know if it was all that natural. And if I were to look back on it, I'd probably be super embarrassed about it. But that kind of was like, I just wanted to express and think about and get my thoughts out of my head about games, and challenge myself to do that, and think about what would it be like to be on a deadline. Like when I was reading like IGN and magazines, like growing up, all the magazines I was reading, like, like a lot of people, you just go like, oh, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, or I have a different opinion. A lot of reactions to whatever you're reading, like, who's this guy think he is to say these sorts of things? But similar to kind of like what you've been saying, I kind of had this realization that I'm like, maybe there's more to this than I think. And I guess I wouldn't really know unless I tried it. So what would it, like, how would I start a review, and what would it be like to be under a deadline to finish a game by a certain time and then produce a written thing after that? I thought that was like a fascinating kind of exercise to do, and it led me down this path. So
interesting. You went with the written stuff. Do you ever find yourself like worrying about like word efficiency? Like, you ever think about, how can I say this as in few words as possible when you're writing? That
would usually lead to like, that was kind of like the writer's block kind of thing. Yeah. Like, but in kind of like the opposite way. So, I would realize that I was too verbose, and I would try to like cut it down, but that's where I would spend a lot of my time, I think. Is taking like 1,000 words and getting down to 750 or something like that.
Are you playing Wordle right now?
I had my first. I feel like we should have like a trigger warning for some people, because some people really don't like hearing about this thing. And I've got it muted on Twitter. I couldn't handle all the posts about it. But ultimately, it was something I didn't understand. It's a classic. I'm afraid of the thing that I don't know. Yeah. And a colleague of mine, she said, have you done today's Wordle? I'm like, I can't even with this game, but I guess I'll give it a try. I got the word on my second try, man. Nice. I think I've retired, actually. I played one game. It took me 2 tries. I think the word was those earlier this week, and nailed it, man. Yeah.
That's hilarious. It's one of the reason I ask is because I people that I podcast with or people like it's a game that I play between me and my wife, or my wife and I. And because of that, she's really good at words and she's amazing with word efficiency. She can write papers all day long, but she doesn't have anything that she feels passionate enough to write stuff with. So I'm always curious when talking to writers, because it's like, I feel like writers always have a really big passion, and she's the only one that I've ever met that hasn't ever felt like she wants to write for the sake of writing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is really interesting. Weird. I had this realization earlier this week. I was just kind of, I don't know, it was a beautiful moment, actually. I was driving up in my car. I've been feeling sick for like the last month, which is why we had to unfortunately reschedule. So I appreciate chatting with you tonight. But I was finally feeling much better, and I love music. I love all these things. And I kind of just went for a drive getting drinks for my wife. Came home and I realized I'd been singing the whole time. And I'm like, that felt awesome. I feel great. I love music. Wait a minute. I also love movies. I also love video games. Like, I have all these things that I really, really love. And isn't that the best feeling in the world? Yeah. So I can't imagine not having something to do something about, either podcast about or write about, or just like grab a stranger from the side of the street and go like, let me tell you about like this thing that's on my mind. Yeah. I love it. Like, thank goodness for this podcasting thing. And it's become even more just mainstream to the point where I will even tell my family about it. I didn't tell my family about my podcast for years. Like, I don't know why. It was just, I think it's because I cared about it so much. Like, it's a weird thing that I would just like, I loved it right from the beginning, man. But you're the guest. This is about you. Tell me about you getting into this stuff, man. Tell me about you getting into podcasting and the solo stuff. And you got an amazing Patreon, by the way. Yeah, everything's rocking and rolling, dude.
I love them. So it's funny because when I started getting into podcasts, because I started working for a pest control company. And when you're working in a pest control company, your job is literally to drive around from house to house to house and just clean the house and spray the house down. And when that's done, you just move on to the next. So it was a lot of time alone. And I realized that audiobooks were just not cutting it. Like, I just wasn't finding anything. And this was after I had quit gaming for the sake of my relationship. And
because of starting.
Yeah. WoW was literally killing my relationship. And I didn't realize that it was because I was so forced on trying to actually do that. But when I was out and about, I found podcasts, and I was thinking, okay, well, I want to get back into Nintendo. That's where my roots are. That's where I grew up with. That's what I've always been attached to. I want to know what the landscape is, because when I heard about the Wii, I was like, I'm not playing with hand controls. I'm not doing motion controls. It's so dumb to me. I'm not going to buy into that. But over the years of spending time with people in Alaska, I discovered like an Xbox, and some friends had like Gears of War, and I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah, man.
So played a little bit of those and stuff, but I never, outside of the couple years that I spent at a GameStop in Arizona, I really had just been in World of Warcraft. So wanted to get back into Nintendo, started listening to podcasts, started trying to find podcasts. And weirdly enough, in 2017, or no, I guess it would have been 2016 when I started trying to find like a Nintendo podcast that was still running was really hard.
Yeah, man.
I don't
know. Not a
what
good
it
time
was.
for Nintendo, dude. It's because nobody cared about Nintendo. It was a wasteland, man. It was terrible.
Yeah. So I found a couple podcasts and I started listening to them, and they started talking about this little thing called the NX.
Yes.
I was like, what is this NX?
The savior.
Like, they're like, it's going to be the next thing after the Wii U. And I was like, all right, well, if the Wii U's dead, I'll get a 3DS, because that seems like it's a safe bet.
Yes. It really was.
It was. It's got a great library, but it's definitely not the long lasting franchise. Well, I guess it's probably been around longer still than the Switch has at this point.
Yeah, it's just not a console. I mean, it definitely. I remember the first time I had a 3DS around, like my kind of in real life friends, and one of my buddies looked at me, he's like, "What are you, 5?" Like, if you're not a gamer, like you just like there's just a completely different perspective on video games, and especially the DS. Like that kind of just it looked like a child's toy.
It was the Nintendogs thing to people.
Exactly.
That was what they saw. You played Mario and you played Nintendogs, and you had a stylus.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I was listening to those podcasts, and as I was following them and getting more and more into Nintendo's like news and stuff like that, I started to want to be more involved. So I started writing emails to podcasters, thinking like, they'll never read my email. It'll never get any notice and stuff. And then once in a while, I'd get an email read, and I was like, oh, that felt really good.
It's the best. Yes.
It felt so cool.
So that's the origin of this show, man. That's where I had the same, because I had the same feeling when I would write into a show, and I'm like, that felt good. Like I liked hearing my question. I was like just waiting for it, it's like writing a letter into the editor and hoping they publish it. Like, there it is. It's there. It's the Leo gif, the Leo meme, just like pointing at the screen. I'm there. It's me.
It's I want to say that it harkens back to that time when, as a kid, you would grow up, and if you were raised Christian or Catholic, you always had the looming idea of Santa. And you sent a letter off to Santa, and if Christmas came and you got that toy, you felt vindicated by your
heard.
Yeah, you felt like Santa heard you and stuff. And then the same thing with school, if you were the person that raised your hand, if the teacher called on you and you got the answer right, you got a gold star. So it was always that kind of like that weird kind of awarding, or I guess, just you got a little bit of a reward whenever you sent it. So I sent in emails to Nintendo Pulse and N64 Josh for
nice.
The Nintendo
there
Power
it
Cast.
is. Yeah, I was trying to think like who was making Nintendo stuff back then. Yeah, N64 Josh for sure.
So I would write into them, and then eventually I was like, I want to start talking. So I started talking to them. I started finding out like how to get in touch with them. That's when I found about like Twitter and Discord and stuff. And then eventually Josh needed someone to jump in on a podcast, and he knew that I had been streaming a little bit. I'd bought a computer for being able to play Splatoon 2 with people online, and I was in the community, and he invited me on, and I was like, I can do this. Everyone tells me that I've got a voice radio, which I don't believe. I just think I have a deep voice, which is, I guess, the radio voice
with the one and only criteria.
Exactly.
You don't sound like this.
Yeah, you can do a deep voice, and that's the requirement. So, having done theater, having an interest in talking to people about games, and not having really a whole lot of friends locally, it felt like the way to connect. It felt like that was the way to get in touch with people. And that was kind of the impetus. So I'd been, sitting around with the idea of like, I want to make a podcast, well, what should I make a podcast on? Well, I love talking about Nintendo. Well, all my friends make Nintendo podcasts. So why would I want to make another Nintendo podcast?
Yeah.
So it was always kind of tough going into that. I don't know if you want to break off on anything off of that, or if you just
keep going on that journey, man. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, if not Nintendo, then what? But I love that, like, just observation. And also like if there's this funny thing that happens when you're in a certain circle, you can almost think that it's like the entirety of the internet, or it speaks to it, like all of it. But actually it's funny. Josh was one person who I'm sure he's spoken about this multiple times since and before. But he introduced me to this notion of abundance. Like he was the one who called it out, ever since he said it, it's like, it's so obvious. This notion that we're not competing over the same 12 people who are listening to our shows, that there's plenty of audience, there's plenty of partnership opportunities, there's plenty of stuff. And we don't have to worry about like bumping into each other. So I like that always, like as soon as he said it, like just like a light bulb went off in my mind in terms of just how I look at the entire sphere and the whole landscape of it all. And if there's ever another example to think about, it's like there's Twitch streamers out there that I've never heard of who have like 3 million followers. There's podcasts out there, same idea. There's video games that none of us talk about who have 100 million active users every month or whatever. Like there's all these things, and like this notion of abundance just makes sense to me. But it is funny to think about, like, how many podcasts were you talking about? Like maybe 3 or 4 Nintendo podcasts that you were aware of. You're like, you don't want to add to that mix. It's like,
it felt like. It felt like one of those weird situations. Like, do I really try and leech away the few followers that they have to join mine? For what reason? Because I'm selfish? Like, and it's funny because I I can't remember when, but it definitely hit me. And I don't think I can't remember if Josh turned me on to it. I am totally missing the conversation that we had about it. But it was definitely at a point where I was like, I listen to a ton of podcasts about gaming. Yeah. And they're all saying the exact same news topics that I am listening to and keeping up with. The only difference is that I care about who's saying it. And that's what matters. Finding people whose voice echoes yours or is the polar opposite and you want to be educated. It was like,
if you're interested in that.
Yeah. And I think everyone ought to. I feel like if you're a diehard Xbox fan, you should have a couple podcasts about PlayStation and Nintendo in your rotation. Yeah. Because having those perspectives is amazingly invaluable. It's amazing to hear about what people talk about when it's not your console and what they're passionate about, because they're gamers as well too. So it's really weird to have these weird siloed off, and no disrespect to the podcast that you have. Because I know that you like to kind of have things siloed off, but at the same time, on all your shows, you do talk about the other console manufacturers and stuff as well too.
Well, and it becomes a bit of a sickness that I'm sure that you've caught as well, in terms of like, once you start one, then you can't just have one podcast. You have to have many podcasts, many projects and things going on. So yeah, like in terms of like Xbox Drive and Nintendo Drive, it's sort of like just by design in terms of like what people look for. Which is the primary reason for that was really just to make sure that the audience kind of connects. Cause it's hard to go, to your point, like unless you're like a famous person in the industry or something, you could do whatever. You could do a game scoop because you're IGN. You can talk about whatever the heck you want. But in terms of finding an audience, I think that's but we also wanted to have all three, in terms of they're very easily findable or searchable. If once you find one, we talk about the Nintendo Drive on the Xbox Drive and everything else like that. But it's I don't know. I agree with you, and it's funny because people seem to know me for the Xbox Drive, I think, more. But it's like I've often talked about this. How I go, like, how many PlayStation controllers do I need to show you? Like, how many, like the PS4 was? I actually had one first. Like that was where all my third party games were up until the One S came out. Like things kind of like switched over for me at that point. But it kind of doesn't matter, and it's too bad, because that is, I would say, generally what people do is they kind of like. Like Luke is a great example of this as well. Like he has an Xbox show. He champions all games, all the time. And there's most of us do, but for whatever reason, it's easier, I think, just to simplify a person to a certain platform, for better or for worse.
I will always champion the people that are willing to take a podcast. And it's the reason why I think my Xbox podcast is set up the way it is it is modeled heavily off of the desire to introduce people to all of the consoles. And I think having your name as like the Xbox Drive, but still talking about PlayStation and Nintendo is always just kind of like dangling a little string above a kitten. Like you're not like giving them a whole feast of catnip, but you're at least giving them a little bit about what's going on outside of the Xbox that they may be interested, especially if you're talking positive about it. If you have a positive attitude about it, then people may not feel like there is such a stigma behind wanting to speak purely on just one console or just having just one console.
I couldn't have said it better myself, actually. Even today, like I felt kind of, I don't know, felt something like I was, we always talk about the games that we're playing, and I'm like, I'm playing Pokemon on Nintendo and I'm playing God of War on PC. Like I haven't played an Xbox game. And to your point, like I feel like just by saying that, on one hand, I'm like, I should have a game on Xbox I should be talking about. But on the other hand, I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, because it's like, it's not a realistic way to play. And in a lot of cases, like the fact that I am playing God of War on PC right now is really because I didn't finish it on PS4 when it would back in 2018, because I felt compelled to keep playing Xbox games. And that's like, especially in the case of God of War, which I will say is like just one of the absolute best games ever crafted. Like I am just in love. I don't know if that's an objective statement that can be made, but I am loving it. And I very possibly could have missed it because my Xbox podcast compelled me to play games on my Xbox. And I think that's kind of silly, to be honest.
A horrible thought to have to, like, And it's such a scary. I will say, and it's a joke in the podcast that I do about Xbox, but there's a lot of games that I missed because of World of Warcraft.
Yeah,
and now I'm trying to go back because I missed out on a large majority of the 360.
Yeah.
I've never touched a PS3 in my life.
Wow.
I've never touched a Vita in my life. I've never had an opportunity. So there's so many games. Like I'm going through Uncharted 1 and 2 right now. I just finished 1 and I'm like halfway through Uncharted 2 and I'm working my way up to Lost Legacy in the 4 because of the remakes.
Yeah.
And my God, those games are absolutely killer. Like,
I'm so glad you totally see that.
It's so amazing. I never hearing everyone talk about it and stuff. They're always like, "Oh yeah, it's Uncharted. It's amazing." And I'm like, "But how good is it really?"
Right.
And when you actually get to sit down and play through it, you're like, "This is a really good game. They did a really, really good job." And I totally missed it because of one game. And I focused in so much on that one game. One, because it was cheap, and two, because it was legacy. I've been, Blizzard kid since '95.
Yeah, man.
It was like
I'm right with you.
It's like I felt like I was doing a disservice to not support World of Warcraft if that's what I was going to do. That was where my legacy was and stuff. But now that I'm going back, it's like it's insane just how many amazing games I've missed. And to think about.
I'm sorry. This is the root of like FOMO right there. Like you're trying to do this thing and there's all these other things just outside of it that you could miss out on. That's a terrifying experience. I want to jump back because you when you talk about Blizzard like the 90s, man, it's like I think Blizzard might have been the first company that I became aware of even just like following and trying to come to learn what the studio was going to make next. This is something that we all follow naturally now. We almost don't even think twice about it. Like we can think about like what is Santa Monica going to be making? What have they made in the past? What are they going to make in the future? Like that's a narrative we talk about all the time. Blizzard was probably the first one that I became aware of that was a thing to look forward to, because I remember hearing about StarCraft, Orcs in Space, and because I had been playing Warcraft 2 the whole time, even to the point where I would go to like GameSpot.com and look at like the old screenshots where it looked a lot like Warcraft. It was like these squiggly graphics, these terrible colors, and they were taking forever for this game to come out. And they like completely changed it to that more isometric view, the menu along the bottom, the StarCraft that we know. Like I was following along there. So I say that in excitement to ask about your journey with Warcraft through StarCraft. Did you play Warcraft 3? Yeah. Did you play StarCraft? Like, talk to me about that, man.
It started with Warcraft. I had my parents picked up a 95 Packard Bell because school was now in high school and we were playing with computers, not typewriters. I had to learn typing, and we broke out the floppy disks to save those English literature reports and stuff. But my dad wanted to have a flight simulator. So we got Flight Simulator and we got a Microsoft Sidewinder, and that was his.
Dude, I love the Sidewinder, man. I've been calling for a Sidewinder like they got the Elite controller. I've been wanting a Sidewinder for years, man. I thought for sure when Flight Simulator was coming back, I'm like, bring me the Sidewinder, man. Force feedback USB, give it to my veins.
They need to. Gosh. Yeah, so he had that, and he had Fury 3 and Microsoft Flight Simulator, and those were the two games I wasn't allowed to touch. But as long as I could put on Warcraft, I was allowed to play whatever I wanted. So I played Warcraft, Orcs and Humans. I played Warcraft 2, Darktide. I jumped into Diablo. My buddy got into Diablo, and then I found out about Diablo, and then I had to convince my mom I was killing the devil, and that's why I was okay to get Diablo.
Yeah, man. I was scared of it. I was terrified. It's been like you talk about like being raised Catholic and stuff. Like I can't have that in my house, man. The whole place is gonna burn down. I can't do that. Yeah. I didn't get into Diablo until like probably actually Diablo 3. I missed all of it, so I still have to play the Resurrected edition. I completely missed it. Ryan and I were chatting, I think, just today that wouldn't it be great when Diablo 2 Resurrected edition comes to Game Pass. Like we all miss talking about that, but. Yeah. In any case, you're doing all the things Blizzard. Yeah.
So that was, and you're right. Like when it came to game companies, it was either between Rare and like GoldenEye and Donkey Kong Country or Blizzard. Those were like
maybe LucasArts. LucasArts might have been up there as well. I had a lot of Star Wars games that.
See, I never got into Star Wars that much when I was playing games. Like, and it's a shame too, because there were so many. Like, I always wanted to play like X-wing or TIE Fighter and stuff, and it's like it never.
Especially if you have that Sidewinder, you got to play X-wing. Got to play TIE Fighter.
I don't know what my dad was thinking. It was almost like he didn't want to get those for some reason, but he was the Star Wars fan, so I don't get it.
Really it seemed weird. Like it was very much a CD-ROM thing. Like we talk about, PlayStation having a CD drive and that being a big deal. But if you had a PC and if you were the kid on the block who had a CD-ROM, oh my gosh, 2 times speed, 4 times speed. And, that was absolutely massive, man. I love that.
It was me and another buddy. He had, I had a CD-ROM. So I had like Encyclopedia Britannica on CD, which was really fun. But he had XCOM. Like the OG XCOM.
Holy crap. Yeah, man.
And him like peeking around corners and these 2D sprites and stuff. I would go over to his house and I'd watch him play XCOM and I'm like, that seems so hard. Where can I just shoot stuff and click A to attack to go? So but yeah, like a lot of PC gaming.
Turns, anything turn-based back in the day, like for me, I just didn't understand it. I watched friends play like the Final Fantasies and things like that, or even Tactics. Tactics was about as close as I got, but I still couldn't seem to like manipulate or navigate the camera well enough to like see anything. And when I watched somebody play Final Fantasy, I'm like, why are they just waiting there? Like that doesn't make any sense. I was very much on the real time kind of end of things.
That's how I feel. That's why whenever I listen to Ryan Turford, I'm always thinking like this guy is like the polar opposite of me. He hates pirates. He loves turn-based stuff. He's a huge weeb. I'm like, man, just give me a first-person shooter. Let me jump into a Zelda game. Like I'm all about Sea of Thieves. Like it's so funny to hear his takes on stuff because I'm like, he is the exact opposite of me, and I respect that.
We need to get you guys like on a show together, actually, just kind of like see what happens. You guys might it might be like a magnet. You guys might just stick together like permanently. Like the opposite is so strong.
We'll either repel each other or we'll become the closest friends.
We got to find out. This is an experiment that I need to see. I need to see happen. I want to ask you about. I kind of wanted to just geek out about Blizzard for a little bit, but I wanted to ask you about Warcraft 3 because I feel like that was a pretty transformational thing. If you were along the road with this with Blizzard the entire time, and if you saw like you were into Diablo as well, so you got a little bit of that like slightly different take on Blizzard action. But as soon as Warcraft 3 came out and this notion of like heroes, and it really kind of introduced the MOBA. Like it was kind of like almost like the first MOBA, but it still had its roots in Warcraft. What was your experience with Warcraft 3?
That was an epoch in time for me. Yeah. And especially with the Frozen Throne expansion, I had always loved story. Like I would say like Ocarina of Time is probably the first kind of major game that I got into that really kind of taught me about story. Like maybe that and like Star Fox 64. I understood GoldenEye because it was like going through that. But Warcraft 3 was a world where I learned names of orcs and I learned names of humans, and I followed them along a journey about trying to save their species, and then being able to play as undead, being able to play as the night elves or the humans or the orcs and see their lives from the different perspectives really did kind of impact like how I felt about games in general. So if not for Warcraft 3, I probably wouldn't have such a love for narrative in games.
Wow.
They were really that impactful for me. And the Frozen Throne, still today, probably one of the coolest, and not to pun on it being frozen, but it was definitely the coolest experience to see this hero of the Alliance go into this frozen wasteland to try and stop this plague. Like the culling of Strathdrome is still one of these like moments in my gaming history where I'm like, he's actually doing it. Yeah. And I kind of agree with his reasoning, even though it seems insane. That he would go and like cull this entire city, and I'm like, that's what he's doing, man. He's going down this path, and to follow him down on that path, Arthas, man, like he is probably one of the biggest villains for me. He's up there with what most people would consider like Sephiroth as like the ultimate villain. Who I only, it was probably like last year I found out why he's the biggest villain in the twist in Final Fantasy VII. That was spoiled for me. But
I don't know actually what you're talking. I haven't finished Final Fantasy VII. I think I've gotten to the cross dressing. That's it. In the original one, I haven't played the remake or anything, man.
Yeah, I've played a little bit of 7, and I got really, really bored. And then I tried to, I haven't played the remake yet, and I'm looking forward to that. But
Same.
It was this same conversation came up with a friend of mine that I do another show with, and she told me the spoiler, and I was like, oh, okay. Like I don't have any connection to this game, so
now you won't.
Yeah, I'm assuming that
pretty much
it was
takes care of that.
Yeah. So
well, look, for me, I want to go back to Warcraft 3 now, because I feel like I'm a little more open-minded with gaming now than I was. I think I was very closed-minded back in the day. And when Warcraft 3 came out, it wasn't Warcraft 2. Like, it really wasn't even close, like in reality. And to me, that it might have been a little too far. And it wasn't really until quite a few years later that I started to even like appreciate or even think that I could play games that were as complex as like what we now know as like a Western RPG or anything, or even a JRPG. I didn't think that those games were made for me. I really grew up thinking that was for neighbor Matt and everybody else. I was here to play GoldenEye and Unreal and Half-Life. And I, for whatever reason, like, it's not like StarCraft or Warcraft were simple games. But for whatever reason, those games with anything like any sort of remotely complex systems, I just kind of like skipped off of. But I have Warcraft 3. Like, why don't I go back and play this? I love this notion of like going back and like filling in our gaming gaps. I think Warcraft 3 is a pretty big one for me, especially as somebody who was all in on Blizzard with Warcraft 2 and StarCraft and all that kind of stuff.
I will say that legacy, if you can play that game offline on a system that will allow it and you don't connect to any internet at all, if you can get that game installed fresh without any internet connection to Blizzard, then you'll probably have a pretty good experience. Because I can tell you right now, Warcraft Reforged, which came out, I believe, 2 years ago, absolutely destroyed the ability to play that game in its original state.
It impacted Warcraft 3? What?
Yeah.
They no way.
They ripped out any of the content, because it's basically the same game, but they basically deleted the ability to authenticate the original game from their servers. So what you used to be able to play the original Warcraft 3 from their Blizzard launcher. You can't do that. You got to play Warcraft Reforged now, and it's just not the same.
I don't even think that I've tried to, because that's where I've seen it. I have that on the launcher, but I don't even think that I've even realized that changed at all.
Not having the nostalgia that you do for it, you would probably be okay with it. I'll be honest.
Okay.
But if you have that nostalgia for the way it looks, the way it plays, and stuff like that, it's going to rub up against you, because it doesn't. But it is still a pretty game. I think it was just mired in a lot of development issues, and they made some bad choices as far as like retaining the legacy. Like, they came out with the Blizzard classic games of the arcade games that they came out with, and at the same turn they completely kill off the original Warcraft 3.
There is, you're probably right about the nostalgia not really being there, and maybe I can kind of skate by without it being really impacting me. But there is something to be said. Like, I never saw the original Star Wars movies in theaters, but I know that I don't like the new versions of those, the original trilogy. I'd much rather that THX VHS version is like, that's as good as it got, I think. And at least in my mind, that was the last version there was, that before all the CGI stuff was added in. So I notice it. Like, you can kind of see, maybe I'd still like to try it, and I'm not sure when.
You'll definitely be able to tell the differences between what was added and what wasn't. The main difference is going through the story. I still think that the whole story still holds up really well, but it was definitely kind of a bummer. We were looking forward to Warcraft 3 Reforged being the Diablo resurrected, or Diablo 2 resurrected,
right? And
it didn't hit the way it wanted to, or the way we wanted it to, because it's so revered. And it's one of those fleeting moments in time where you get lightning in a bottle, and it's hard to try and recapture that, unfortunately.
Well, that's the thing with with Blizzard, and I would argue the same thing with like BioWare for many years, where it's just like, it seemed like they couldn't fail. It seemed like they couldn't miss. And you're right, like, capturing that lightning in a bottle should be rare, but they just kept doing it, like, time after time again. It was just like, this is a guarantee. It was almost to that impact. But everybody, every studio falls, and that's the saddest part. I don't know. I never want to celebrate that. It seems like some people enjoy that quite a lot, but a lot of really recent examples of this, like CD Projekt Red, and you just hope that the next God of War really hits, because it seems like that studio is just crushing it these days, and
I think
Insomniac is doing really great. So you just want them to keep doing it. But
Yeah.
then you have these things that happen that.
I mean, I've been looking at a lot of the videos on Twitter, and just based on the fact that people are seeing the same animations between like God of War getting into a boat and stuff, I think we'll be okay. It feels like they're not straying too far from the.
That's true. That's true.
So it's not like he's doing a backflip into the thing, so they're not getting crazy with it.
He's got some like funny one-liners. They turn Kratos into a new age Duke Nukem. That'd be awesome. He's just got all the attitude and everything. That'd be great. That's why they keep me far away from making any games. I want to close out. I probably have to. I say this to a lot of people, but I'll probably have to have you back on, because I think there's a lot to still discuss. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask a little bit about the thing that actually got me to contact you to be on the show. Actually, was at the tail end of 2021, you had sent a tweet out about an audiobook you were listening to. I think it was like Unf Yourself. Pardon the censoring. You were talking about how you wanted to work on some projects that I think were adding to fulfillment in your life. So I wanted to ask you what brought that on, and then now that we're a month into 2022, like how that's going.
Yeah. So, I mean, little kind of catching people up. I've been doing podcasting for Sea of Thieves since 2018, February 2018, when they had come out with betas, and I'd been doing the same thing over and over and over again. The book that I read was Unf Yourself. And it was one of those things where I don't even know how it ended up in my Audible library. It just happened to be there. And I was looking at it and I was thinking, I'm just going to listen to it, because why not? I don't have anything. It seems like it's a short book. And when I sat down and I started listening to it, the Scottish gentleman that wrote it was basically telling me all the things that my wife had told me for years. Yeah. Except it was coming from a third perspective. And when I was listening to it, basically the whole idea, the whole premise of it is to get out of your head, to basically tell yourself that if you're living in a comfortable situation, then you're not taking chances, which means you're not pushing yourself to achieve what you want. And if you want something, the only way that you're going to get it is if you go and actually do the things that you need to do to get it.
I love it.
So that's what I did. I started up another podcast that was a more generalized podcast that was kind of leans towards Xbox, because I wasn't being fulfilled 100% with the Sea of Thieves podcast that I was doing. I was talking about Sea of Thieves and I really loved it, but I always had this urge to want to talk about games more generally. And I didn't feel like I would be doing the right thing for the Sea of Thieves audience by stealing their time for stuff that I wanted to talk about that wasn't based in Sea of Thieves.
Right.
So I set up everything. I got everything developed. I put together everything that I needed to for a basis for this podcast, and I started doing that. And then I started getting offers for Sea of Thieves podcast, and that was coming in the form of like, I think Manscaped is the one that I'm working on right now. And normally, because of the podcast that I run for Sea of Thieves, it is a very kid-friendly podcast. It's not for kids, but I want to make sure that if parents are listening to it in front of kids, they don't have to worry about the things that I'm saying. Yeah. So I've always been very, very careful about the sponsors that I want to promote. I also want to make sure that I'm very happy with those ones. So normally I probably would have said prior to 2022, I would have said no to that, because it just seemed like it was a little too risque. Yeah. And I started saying yes to them. So I said yes to them. I've now got them as a sponsor. I'm very happy about that, because it's been a really good relationship so far. And I started saying yes to situations where I was feeling uncomfortable. I've been doing the same job that I had been doing outside of podcasting, my actual job. I've been doing that for a few years now, and I just wasn't satisfied with it. So when I heard about a work opportunity from my manager's manager, I went up to them and I said, "Hey, I don't know much about what this is, but it sounds interesting. I want to know more about it.
Yeah.
So I started saying yes, and I started saying yes to that. And now I've got a new job, and I'm going to be starting in a month, working from home, getting paid more, being able to be closer to the community. I'm going to be able to do jobs for people that are a lot more interesting than just the remedial tasks that I was unsatisfied with in the past. So the book has basically gotten me in the mindset to stop being lazy. And so often, especially with a new year, you always make these promises to yourself. You're always telling yourself, like, I want to make sure that I do these things this year. And that hardly ever comes into fruition. A few people can, but it's always a tough mindset. I'm really good at getting 90% of the way on things and then dropping the ball in the last 10%.
Yeah, man.
So many unfinished things, so many desires that I want to do. And listening to that book was the wake up call that I needed to tell me that no one's going to pull me across the finish line. If I want to get across the finish line, I have to make that extra 10%. I have to walk across that finish line. And ever since then, ever since I've told myself, like, if I want the dishes done, just get up and go do them. It's not going to take that long. It's going to take a lot less time than you think it will. Yeah. Then how much you're building it up in your mind. Like you're making things so much harder in your mind than if you just went up and gotten it done. Yeah. So that's been what that book was. And ever since then, I've had so much more growth. I've had so much more enjoyment. I'm doing the things that I want. Like I was doing a podcast with a friend about indies, and I had a really tough time feeling like I could commit to her. And when I found out that she was talking with another friend of ours to do indies and stuff, I was like, I'm going to produce it. I wanted you to start this podcast because I know you have a voice and I know you two together are really good. I can't commit to playing all the games, so I'm going to help you guys produce it and do the stuff that I can do to get you guys out into the world, and then eventually teach you how to get that for yourself as well too. So it's been an experience where everything in probably the last few months has been about how can I either get myself to do the things that I should be doing to become successful in life, because that's the only way I'm going to be successful. No one's going to drop money in my pockets. If I was ever had a rich relative out there, it went to someone else and not me. So the only way I'm going to get that is if I get it myself. And the way that I can do that is by building up the people around me too, building up a community, helping them, enable them to do the things that they want to do, and trying to give them paths to success so that they can then start walking their own path and not feel reliant on the person who started them off at.
Yeah, man. I mean, that is an endorsement for a book if I've ever heard of one. I think my final question for you is a little bit about just like, how much do you think what you're experiencing now has something to do with, I think the message in the book is one thing. But I also want to ask you about like your openness to what that book was about to tell you, because I think that has to be an important factor here. That you can read a book all you want, the words are going to be the same, but you seem to be maybe like looking for something like that, some sort of like playbook to go do this, and this will address some of the concerns that you've been having over the last little while.
What's funny about that book is it was all the stuff that I already knew. Nothing in that book is anything that I didn't already know, because I knew what I had to do to succeed, but I never did it. What that book finally did was tell me that it was at that point that I realized, like, and you've started projects and they've never gone through, and you know that's a problem. You know that it's an issue with you. And there's so many of us that will start something or will have an idea for something and we'll think it's really cool and there will be a lot of passion at the moment. And then when it comes to actually doing it, you just fall short. You feel like the workload is too high or you can't fit it into your schedule and you're just stuck in this rut. And the book told me all of that. So I don't know if I was ready for it or if it was a moment where I realized that there wasn't a magical unicorn about to walk around the corner and grant me a wish. Yeah. And when I walked around that corner and saw that all the opportunity was around that corner. All I had to do was actually finish walking around the corner. That was when I started to see like the opportunities are there for you. The only thing you have to do is you have to realize that no one's going to pull you through a door into a magical land. You have to find that land yourself. You have to make that land yourself. And when you do, you'll love it because it's yours and it's exactly what you wanted.
It's exactly what I was going to cap that off with was, not only is there nobody there to do that, but also even if there was, that wouldn't be very gratifying at all. Like it's so rewarding to do. Like I put myself through something hard, something I'd never done before, didn't know if I could do it, but I came out the other side. And now like, not only is that doubt gone, it's like, it's a confidence booster. You can take on the next thing. It'll be in your back pocket and your little bag of tricks for the next thing that you want to do. And it creates this like super positive momentum. And that might be part of why we can't just do one podcast. Maybe that that may be part of it. It just creates this like almost unstoppable momentum where like, you remember, I don't know, at least for me, I was so nervous before jumping on a podcast and for many times into recording each episode, like this is the one where it all falls apart. This is probably going to be terrible. And it's, after years and years of doing the thing that you gain the confidence that it becomes second nature. And isn't that insane? Like, I think podcasting, at least for me, is a really good example of this, that it's the same thing you hear as a kid. It's, practice makes perfect, and the muscle memory kind of kicks in and you're not even thinking about it anymore. And it's impossible to think when you're trying something new for the first time and you're all wobbly and you're falling over and you're making a fool out of yourself, that there could ever be a time in maybe even the near future that you're not even thinking about it and you're just doing it. That is motivation enough for me to think about like just trying something for the first time and knowing that, just embracing that developmental stage as like, I'm learning something new. And isn't that the coolest thing? I love that.
And that's actually the way I got my job was literally by telling them, I don't know what we're doing in this job. And I'm not going to pretend to know exactly how to do what we're doing in this job. But if you had asked me 4 years ago if I knew how to do podcasting, I would have told you no. There's no way I have any clue how to do it. But I've got a really good podcast now. I'm very proud of it, and I'm making more at the same time. So for me, it's just a matter of doing it, getting in there, getting your hands dirty. Like you're working out now. It's tough now, but I know that there's a reason why people love going to the gym. They love working out and they love getting that satisfaction. And it's the same premise. We just love that reward.
Well, and it is that is specifically what I'm talking about when I say like, I've got that in my back pocket. Like I've been there. I've been through like I can't push this. I've had a friend push me through. Like I have been in the best shape of my life before. I'm definitely not there now, but I know what it takes to get there. So it's like when you have those experiences in your back pocket that you can draw upon, it's like you can translate those things. I think you and I have this in common too. I said at one of the job that really changed my life was like me in the interview going, I don't know what this program is that you want me to run. Like, what is that? What does this acronym stand for? They shouldn't be giving a job like that to somebody who's asking a question like that, but it's the growth mindset. It's the open-mindedness. It's the willingness to like learn and be enthusiastic about it. That's the experience that I take away from it. So I love hearing that happened for you as well. Cause I had a very, very similar kind of experience, man. Holy crap. You go like lift some weights or I don't know, like punch some, I don't even know the meat thing that Rocky punches. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Just go to even better. Go to a meat locker or some sort. Cause that's where I live. We're just out in basically we're out in Russia at this point. I'm not running on any beaches, man. It's permafrost out there, dude. It is absolutely wild.
As long as you have the Eye of the Tiger song going, it doesn't matter where you're at. It'll feel great.
Like that song, it's not even fair. That song is so good. It's just what an anthem. Holy cow.
Yeah, it really is.
Oh, dude, I've had such a blast chatting with you. I knew that I would. Definitely going to have you back on. Before I let you go, do you want to tell people where to find your podcast, your all the social media, all the stuff you want to drive people towards?
Appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, thank you. If people want to find out about this thing called Sea of Thieves that Ryan would absolutely hate, even though I know it would be an amazing game for him, it's my favorite game in the world. It really is. It tops World of Warcraft for me, and it tops Zelda for me. But I do a Sea of Thieves podcast and have been for many, many years. There's some really good interviews with the devs. If you guys ever want to hear about stuff for the game from Rare, from the horse's mouth itself, just search Sea of Thieves podcast. You'll find Keelhauled. That's my guy. And I've got a new podcast that I kicked up that is in competition purely for Aaron Greenberg's follow.
Nice.
So it's called the Xbox Wrap Up. Joe Moran, or Mr. Badbit, joked about how Aaron Greenberg was following him as a PlayStation podcaster instead of Luke Lore and
not Luke.
and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make an Xbox podcast, and my whole goal of this is to try and get Aaron Greenberg to follow me before he follows Luke. And if anything,
more people should do this. Hey, I want to throw it out there. This must have happened a little while ago. Aaron Greenberg follows me as well. We follow each other. So there, Luke Lore. How about that?
See, it's not hard, Luke.
It's not hard. Anybody can do it. Yeah,
just
I don't know.
Do it. Just ask him for a follow.
He's waiting for Luke to change his name back to MLS Reserves. That's a callback.
Oh man.
So bad. Very cool, man.
So doing that. If you guys want to get a hold of me on Twitter, you can always reach out to me at CAPT_LOGUN as opposed to LOGAN. I have a weird obsession with the anime Trigun and Vash the Stampede. So like growing up in early 2000s, I was just like, oh, love and peace. That's all it's about. Love and peace. And ever since then, I've just had a huge love for Trigun as a result. So
I love it, man.
That's kind of that. But Sean, thank you for having me, man. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I was really excited when you reached out. It was one of those moments where I was like, I'm going to say yes. It's going to feel uncomfortable and I'm a little nervous, but I know I got this. It should be
and then
okay.
I totally cancel on you and delay that whole experience because I wasn't feeling so good. But it's one of those things when sometimes I see people tweet a thing and I'm like, I need to talk to this person about that thing. And then who knows what else, I'm sure something else will come out of it. But every once in a while that happens to me. And I love those moments. So I tried to jump on it. And that was at actually a particularly, I don't think I had a very good day that day, actually. The day that I messaged you. Actually, I think that was chances are it was one of the days that one of my dogs had passed away. Actually,
yeah.
But I wanted to just
I do recall that.
Yeah, I was glad to see you kind of like putting that out there because I don't know that I'd seen you do that before, and I see you very active in the community as well. So it just seemed like, I was sure that we were going to have a conversation like generally like what we had today. So I appreciate being open, just like last week. Trucker Sloth was very open as well, and I love that you came out here and. Yeah, man, just really opened up about it.
I love that you do this. Like this is something man. Like it's one of the things I love about being able to do what I do with Keelhold. I love having my end of the month episodes with community members because it gives them a voice. And, I think back like, I loved getting my email read on a podcast, but you doing this podcast is literally reaching out to community members and bringing them in and giving them a moment to be on a podcast. And that was the origin of it all, man. Thank you for recognizing that. Because it was like, that was why that was a huge thing that I was trying to achieve at the beginning. And then what I realized is that everybody has their own podcast, and that, and to a certain extent too, that it in my mind in the early days, it was like, if somebody has their own podcast, then they might be an easier guest. And I had fooled myself into thinking that for a long time. And what I ended up finding, and to a certain extent, maybe that's true. But what I ended up finding was that the people who didn't have their own podcast, they hadn't had it's like a rock band who hasn't done their first album yet. Their first album is always great because they've taken up into their whole lives to do that, to produce that record. And so for people who haven't had their own podcast yet, like they don't have a canned response to a certain type of question. They're just like, they're kind of discovering it as they go along. And there's something magical about people like finding their voice as they're having to speak it too. So I love now I feel like I'm kind of navel gazing here, but I do thank you, man. I do love this show, and I love that it can be anything from week to week. What you're doing here, and not to try and wax poetic, but there used to be public forums back in the olden times and stuff where people would come together and have discussions. The olden times. Oh
yeah, actually, you really mean forums? Like, not, I thought you mean like on like internet forums, but yeah, like they really are the olden times.
Yeah. So no, this is, I guess that joke was even better. I actually like your joke better. The olden times of the forums. Yeah. But what Yumi and Capri does, what this show does is it helps build out, or We the Gamers, instead of like you're giving people a venue. And people don't always have a venue. They may not be able to get past the bouncer. And what you're doing is you're tapping the bouncer on the shoulder and saying, this guy's okay, bring him in. And not many people do that. I think a lot of people assume that the only way to get into podcasting is by building your own podcasting and having a niche and being able to do all this stuff. Sometimes it's just someone taking them, showing them this is all it is. This is as easy it is. And you can do this too, and giving them that opportunity. And I love that. I love that you're doing that.
Thanks, man. I hadn't thought of it in that way. The one thing that I had been kind of considering, especially recently, is just the importance of giving people a chance and a moment to flesh out a thought and a sentence. Because I don't think our natural conversations just in our day-to-day lives allow for me to shut up for a second and like have you just kind of like tell your story. And I think that is so for me as a kid who grew up in there's 4 kids and there was every family get together. There's a trillion people around. There's, I had to wait my turn to like say something. It seems like everybody else had something to say. And so for podcasting and to give somebody else that moment to go like, now it's your turn. And I'm genuinely interested in like hearing what you have to say about this topic. I feel like that feels good when I get that chance, and that has to feel good for other people to go like, you really want to hear like I must be boring. Like I must be uninteresting, but you seem to want to hear about this. And I genuinely do. And the thing is that people seem to listen to it as well. So I don't know, that there's just a whole lot of goodness to it. And I've been on a journey with it where at one point I was like, I could try to get like this good get of a guest. And to a certain extent, I'm sure that will happen, but I find so much more value having like somebody like you on and going like, this is great. Cause I know that we'll also stay in touch and all that kind of stuff where you get a big guest on, you have your moment and then they go off and you never chat with them again. That never felt very satisfying to me.
Some of the best interviews we've had have been about people that aren't on the podcast, but are in the community. And
right.
Everything that they do for the community that no one, you probably hear their name in the Patreon call outs, but you know nothing about them. And hearing voices from people and hearing like their stories and stuff when before all they were was just a name on a call out.
It's the best.
It's so cool. It's so interesting because they're all the same as us. The only difference is that we're the ones that crazily thought that we were going to be like worth sitting in front of a microphone and recording it for an hour and then putting it out there. Yeah. And it could literally be anyone that does that. And it's no different than what they do. The only difference is they're usually like the big person back in the wings that are making sure that the rest of the show is going on well.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's nice to hear them.
Oh man, I'm ready to like go tackle the world. I'm so glad that we podcast together, man. This is all really good. Motivation freaking Wednesday here tonight, man. I'm going to close it out here. Thank you so much for being on the show, man. And I have all your stuff in the show notes for people to go click and follow, but thanks for carving out time for me tonight, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure again. I can't wait to hear how people decide to take this information and run with it and what success they run into now.
Yeah, man. I'm going to hit stop there. Not many people know this about We the GamerCast. Some of you know. Some of you have been around for many, many years. But I think it was just before Ellie was born. She's now 3 and a bit. Just before Ellie was born, I kind of got a little overwhelmed with just everything. And I was like, well, obviously the right thing to do at this point is to cancel We the GamerCast, to shut it down. And it's crazy to think about that. Obviously, the show came back, and at a certain point, Bobby and I, the Nintendo guru, we started a Patreon, and one of the goals was to bring back We the GamerCast. I think we was actually called The GamerCast for a little while. And it's like, man, the journey that this show has been on for a variety of reasons, whether it's life itself or just me overthinking things or whatever it was, you guys have been with me. Many of you have been with me for a very, very long time, and that is never lost on me. As much as I joke around about things and as much as I try to keep things lighthearted, it always is on my mind, especially over the last week with the Patreon exceeding over 70 patrons. With that, we've never done this before, you guys. We're into uncharted territory. The level of support is absolutely amazing. And I am working on, by the way, thanks to us getting over 69 patrons, nice, I'm drawing a picture of Ryan Turford riding a moose, and I posted in the Patreon exclusive area. By the way, did you guys know there's a Patreon exclusive area of the Discord? You can't see it unless you're a patron, and then it kind of appears, and everybody's like, "Ooh, what's over here?" It's like a hidden room that I just sort of told you about. But now you're going to be searching all over the place. You're going to be like, "Where is this back door? Where's this trap door?" I'll tell you where. It's patreon.com/YumiCapri, and what you can find in there is I did a little concepting, because I didn't know, like, when I say Ryan Turford riding a moose, I'm like, okay, so like, is he in a field somewhere? Like, what kind of moose? How do I even draw Ryan? I'm not exactly like an artiste. You know, I'm not exactly going to be, I'm not creating anything realistic. I'm not going to have like Ryan sitting on a lounger, and I'm not going to draw him like my French girls. I don't have any French girls. So how can I draw Ryan like my French girls? I don't have any. I don't think you do either. But in any case, go into there so you can find out what that picture is maybe going to look like. And in the meantime, follow me on Twitter at Sean Capri, Sean like Connor Capri like the pants. I love you all. See you guys next time. Okay, bye-bye.
Jason! 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 Sean! 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 Sean, where are you? Jason! 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 Sean! 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 Jason! 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 Jason!